In 1965, nearly 40% of Americans still lived in towns with fewer than 10,000 people. Neighbors borrowed sugar without knocking. Doctors made house calls at 2 in the morning. Nobody locked a single door. Today, most of those traditions have vanished so completely that your own children would not believe they existed. Number 14 on this list was so common that the USDA built an entire program around it. Number 7, created bonds between strangers that social media cannot touch. These were not quaint habits. They were the operating system of American life. Before we start, hit subscribe because this list might remind you of something you did not know you were missing. Number 25, the party line, telephone. Before private phone lines reached every farmhouse, rural families shared a single circuit with 4, 6, sometimes 10 neighbors. Each household had its own ring pattern. 2 short rings meant the Hendersons. 1 long and 1 short meant the Carters. You picked up only for your ring, but everyone knew half the town was listening anyway. By 1950, over 70% of rural subscribers were still on party lines according to AT&T records. Conversations stayed short and civil because Mrs. Patterson, 3 farms over, would hear every word and have it repeated at the post office by morning. Children learned to say yes, ma'am, on the phone because an audience was always assumed. When private lines replaced them in the late 1960s, something unexpected disappeared with the eavesdropping: the informal emergency network. If someone picked up and heard crying or distress, help arrived within minutes. No 911 needed. The whole road just showed up. Number 24, leaving doors unlocked. In small towns across the Midwest and South, locking your front door was an insult to your neighbors. It suggested you did not trust them. A 1962 Gallup poll found that over 60% of rural Americans never locked their doors at night. The mailman walked in and left packages on the kitchen table. The neighbor kid wandered through for a glass of sweet tea without asking. This was not naivety. It was a social contract. Everyone watched out for everyone. The cost of crime was not just legal, it was total social exile. You would never sell another bushel of corn, never get help with a broken fence, never sit in a pew without feeling every eye. That mutual accountability kept doors open for 100 years. Deadbolts came later, and with them the quiet admission that the contract had been broken. Number 23, the dinner bell. That cast iron bell on a pole outside the farmhouse was communication technology. Mothers rang it at noon and supper time, and the sound carried across fields for half a mile. Fathers heard it over the tractor. Children heard it from the creek where they had been catching crawdads since breakfast. No arguments, no second call. Everyone came. When the bell rang at the Johnson place, the Miller kids a quarter mile away knew their own bell would follow within minutes. It synchronized communities without a clock. The bells went quiet when air conditioning closed the windows and television moved supper time indoors. Some still hang on old posts, rusted and waiting for someone to pull the rope. Number 22, the ice cream social. Churches and granges organized ice cream socials every summer, and the whole county showed up. Women competed fiercely over whose vanilla was smoothest, whose peach had the best fruit. Hand-crank freezers churned on every table, packed with rock salt and ice. Children took turns on the handle until their arms burned, knowing the reward was being first to lick the dasher. A quarter bought a bowl. 50 cents got you seconds and a slice of somebody's pie. By 1955, the National Grange reported that ice cream socials were the most attended community event in rural America, outdrawing county fairs in some states. Young couples courted over shared bowls. Old men argued politics on the church steps. Teenagers disappeared behind the fellowship hall and came back pretending nothing happened. The whole thing ran on volunteer labor, donated cream from local dairies, and the understanding that showing up was not optional. Your absence would be noted and discussed at length. The ice cream social was democracy with a dessert course. It cost almost nothing, required no technology, and bound a town together tighter than any council meeting ever could. Number 21, bartering with neighbors. Cash was scarce, but skills and surplus were everywhere. A farmer with extra sweet corn traded with the widow who could sew. The mechanic fixed your truck, and you brought him venison in November. No receipts, just a handshake and the understanding that the ledger would balance eventually. Through the 1950s, informal barter sustained communities across Appalachia, the Ozarks, and the rural Deep South. General stores ran tab systems, accepting eggs and butter alongside coins. Children grew up knowing that wealth was measured in what you could do and whether your word was good. That economy of trust collapsed when chain stores demanded cash only, and the IRS began treating barter as taxable income in 1982. The handshake deal did not die because people stopped trusting each other. It died because the system stopped allowing it. Number 20, sitting on the front porch. The front porch was the original social media. Families gathered every evening after supper, watching the road, waving at cars, calling out to neighbors. In the 1950s, porches averaged 8 to 10 feet deep, designed for living. The porch was where gossip traveled, courtships were supervised, and old men told stories until the fireflies came out. The porch disappeared when developers discovered garages sold houses faster. Air conditioning pulled families inside. The back deck replaced the front porch, and with that single architectural shift, Americans turned their backs on their own neighborhoods. First pattern break. Here is where the list takes a turn. The country doctor making house calls was not just a convenience. It was a lifeline that held rural communities together for a century. When your child ran a fever at 2 in the morning, you called Doc Henderson and he showed up at your kitchen table with a black bag and a calm voice that settled everyone before he touched the patient. By 1950, the AMA estimated 40% of all physician encounters were house calls. In small towns, closer to 60%. The doctor knew your family history because he had delivered you, your siblings, and half the town. He accepted chickens, firewood, and jars of preserves when cash was short. He set bones on kitchen tables and sat with the dying because there was nowhere else for them to go. The house call vanished when insurance companies stopped reimbursing for them. Not because doctors stopped caring, because the system decided a patient had to come to the building where the billing codes lived. We gained efficiency and lost the doctor who knew your name, your grandfather's heart condition, and which kid was faking it. Number 18, quilting bees. Women gathered at someone's home or the church hall with fabric scraps, needles, and enough gossip to last until sunset. A bee could finish an entire quilt in a single day, work that would take one woman weeks. The WPA recorded over 3,000 active quilting circles during the Depression, producing blankets for families who could not afford them. A new bride received a wedding quilt stitched by every woman in the community, each square carrying a signature or a prayer. The quilting bee faded when cheap blankets flooded department stores and women entered the workforce in numbers that made afternoon gatherings impossible. The quilts survive in attics and antique shops. But the circles that made them, those rooms full of laughter and needles and shared purpose, are gone. Number 17, the general store. Before Walmart and Dollar General, every small town had a general store that sold everything from nails to canned peaches to penny candy. The owner knew every customer by name and kept a mental inventory of who needed what. Credit was extended on trust. A handshake was a receipt. The store doubled as post office, meeting hall, and rumor mill. By 1955, roughly 60,000 general stores served rural America. The smell was unmistakable. A mixture of oiled wood floors, coffee beans, leather goods, and the faint sweetness of open candy jars lining the counter. Old men played checkers by the potbelly stove while children pressed noses to the glass case, counting their pennies twice before choosing. The general store closed when chain stores moved to the edge of town, offering prices no independent could match. When the store went, the gathering place went with it. No one lingers at a self-checkout machine. No one plays checkers in the parking lot of a big box retailer. No one asks how your mother is doing at a kiosk. Number 16, canning season. When the garden came in heavy in late summer, every kitchen became a factory. Women stood over boiling water baths for days, putting up tomatoes, green beans, peaches, pickles, and jams in mason jars by the hundreds. The Ball Blue Book, first published in 1909, sat in nearly every rural kitchen in America like a second Bible. By 1960, over 60% of rural households preserved food at home. The kitchen windows steamed until you could not see the yard. Counters vanished under rows of cooling jars. Children snapped beans on the porch until their fingers turned green. That satisfying pop of a lid sealing meant security. It meant winter would not catch you empty-handed. The pantry shelves lined with jewel-colored jars of summer were not decoration. They were insurance against lean months, against blizzards, against anything the world might throw at a family that depended on its own two hands. Canning faded when freezers became affordable and supermarkets made produce available year-round. But something was lost in the trade. The pride of walking past a shelf you filled yourself, and the yearly ritual that connected mothers and daughters and grandmothers across generations, elbow to elbow at the kitchen counter. Number 15, Decoration Day at the cemetery. Before Memorial Day became a 3-day weekend for barbecues, small towns observed Decoration Day with near-sacred seriousness. Families spent the morning clearing weeds, planting flowers, and laying wreaths on graves. In the rural South, the event included a potluck on the church grounds. Families drove hours to reconnect with cousins not seen since the previous year. It was a reunion and a history lesson held on hallowed ground. The tradition faded as families scattered and the holiday detached from its purpose. Number 14, the 4-H livestock auction. Children raised calves, lambs, and hogs from birth, fed them every morning before school, then sold them at the county fair. The USDA launched 4-H in 1902. By the 1950s, over 2 million participated. Local businessmen often bid above market price because they were not buying an animal. They were investing in a child's character. The boy or girl who raised that steer learned responsibility, economics, and the hard lesson that attachment and commerce do not always coexist. Tears were common. Nobody pretended it was easy. The money went into college savings. Participation has declined since the 1980s as rural populations shrank. The lessons it taught are ones no classroom has replicated. Second pattern break. This next one sounds too simple to matter, but waving at every passing vehicle on a country road was not a quirk, it was a code. One finger raised off the steering wheel, that was all. The wave said, "I see you, I am not a threat, and if your truck breaks down ahead, I will stop." Where the nearest tow was 40 minutes away and cell phones did not exist, that wave was a standing agreement of mutual aid. Old-timers can still spot a local by whether they wave. The tradition persists in the most rural corners, but it is dying. More traffic, more strangers, more tinted windows. The one-finger wave is becoming a relic, and the promise it carried is fading with it. Number 12, barn raisings. When a farmer needed a new barn, the entire community showed up with tools and lumber. No contractor, no permits, no invoices. 20 or 30 men could frame and roof a barn in a single day, while the women cooked enough food to feed an army. The tradition was strongest among Amish and Mennonite communities, but extended across rural America well into the 1960s. The barn raising expressed the principle that governed small-town life. You helped because someday you would need help. The debt was never spoken. It was understood. Children fetched water and carried nails. Teenagers learned carpentry by watching their fathers measure twice and cut once. The day ended with a meal that rivaled any holiday table, eaten by men whose clothes were soaked through with sweat and sawdust. The barn raising disappeared when commercial construction made it cheaper to hire professionals, and liability concerns made communal labor legally risky. The barns raised by hand still stand across the heartland. They last longer than the ones built by contractors. The neighbors who raised them knew something about building that no blueprint could teach. Number 11, the traveling salesman. The Fuller Brush man, the Watkins man, or the Avon lady drove dusty roads with products and conversation. In the 1950s, door-to-door sales employed over 2 million Americans. The salesman brought news from the next county. He stayed for coffee. He remembered your children's names. The Watkins man sold vanilla and spices from a catalog that read like poetry. These were relationships maintained over years and miles. The traveling salesman vanished when retail moved online and suspicion replaced hospitality. Number 10, Sunday dinner after church. The biggest meal of the week was not Thanksgiving. It was every single Sunday. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, biscuits, green beans, slow cooked with ham hocks, and pie for dessert. Always pie. The preparation started Saturday night. The chicken was killed, plucked, and soaked in buttermilk. The pies were baked and set to cool on windowsills where the whole neighborhood could see them and start anticipating. Sunday morning, the house smelled like heaven before anyone left for church. Mothers worked in their good dresses with an apron tied over top, pulling biscuits from the oven while ironing a tablecloth simultaneously. The table was extended with leaves that came out once a week. Grandparents sat at the heads. Children ate at a separate table and considered it a genuine promotion when they finally graduated to the adult seats. The meal lasted 2 hours. Conversations wandered from scripture to weather to who was courting whom. Nobody checked a phone because phones were attached to walls. Sunday dinner died slowly, killed by youth sports schedules, restaurant brunches, and the general acceleration of American life. The table that once held 3 generations now holds car keys and unopened mail. Number 9, the volunteer fire department fish fry. Catfish dredged in seasoned cornmeal and fried in cast-iron kettles over open fires in the firehouse parking lot. Coleslaw came in 5-gallon buckets. Hush puppies were dropped into the oil by the hundreds. A plate cost $3 and came with more food than one person could finish. By the 1960s, the National Volunteer Fire Council estimated that fish fries were the primary fundraiser for over 40% of volunteer departments nationwide. The whole town came. The mayor ate beside the mechanic. The preacher sat with the bootlegger. Children chased each other around folding tables while parents talked about rain and crops and who was building what on whose property line. For one evening, every boundary softened. Every grudge took the night off. The fish fry still exists in scattered pockets, but the volunteer departments themselves are dying. Recruitment is down over 60% since the 1980s. When the department goes, the fish fry goes with it, and the last excuse for an entire town to sit down together and eat from the same pot disappears. Number 8. Walking beans. Every summer, Corn Belt teenagers earned their first paycheck pulling weeds from soybean rows that stretched to the horizon. You showed up at dawn, worked until noon, earned $2 an hour, and came home sunburned and mosquito-bitten. The money bought school clothes. The experience taught what no camp could. That hard work was not romantic. It was just hard and worth doing. Herbicide-tolerant crops eliminated the need in the 1990s. An entire generation's introduction to honest labor vanished within a decade. Number 7. The potluck supper. When the church, the grange, or the school needed a meal for 100 people, nobody hired a caterer. Every family brought a dish, and the result was a buffet table that stretched the length of the fellowship hall. Fried chicken beside tuna casserole, beside Jell-O salad, beside a crock pot of meatballs, beside 3 kinds of pie. No coordination, no sign-up sheets in the early days. Everyone brought their best and trusted the table would balance itself. And it always did. The potluck was the great equalizer. The banker's wife's scalloped potatoes sat beside the janitor's wife's cornbread, and both were judged on merit alone. Reputations were built and destroyed at the potluck table. Bring a bad dish once and people remembered for years. Bring a great one and you were asked to make it until you died. The potluck created a web of obligation and pride that held towns together. It fades now because nobody has time to cook, because dietary restrictions have complicated communal eating, and because we have lost the habit of gathering without a scheduled reason. The potluck needed no reason. The gathering was the reason. Number 6. Hanging laundry on the line. Monday was wash day. Sheets snapped in the wind like flags of domestic order. By 1960, less than 20% of rural homes had a dryer. Women read clouds like sailors because surprise rain meant rewashing everything. The smell of line-dried sheets, sun-bleached and wind-scrubbed, triggers something deep in anyone over 50. The clothesline was more than a drying method. It was a public signal that a household was functioning, that someone inside was keeping standards. An empty line meant something was wrong. Neighbors noticed, neighbors checked. Number 5. The one-room schoolhouse. Through the 1950s, thousands still operated. By 1940, over 100,000 existed. One teacher handled 1st through 8th grade. Older students helped younger ones as a matter of course, learning as they taught. The potbelly stove heated the room. The outhouse served everyone. These schools produced senators, scientists, and justices. Consolidation closed most by the 1970s. The graduates will tell you they received something a building with 1,000 students cannot provide. A teacher who knew exactly who you were and would not let you fail. Number 4. Whittling on the courthouse steps. Old men gathered on benches with pocket knives and pieces of cedar, shaving curls of wood while they talked about nothing and everything. By mid-morning, the bench was full. By noon, every piece of local news had been circulated and settled. Who was selling what land? Whose kid was in trouble? Whether the rain would hold. The knife was just something to do with your hands while your mind worked. The tradition faded when coffee shops pulled old men indoors and courthouses installed security. The benches are still there in some towns. They are empty. Number 3. The livestock sale barn. Every week, farmers from 3 or 4 counties gathered at the local sale barn to buy and sell cattle, hogs, and sheep. The auctioneer's rapid-fire chant echoed through concrete bleachers that smelled permanently of manure and tobacco. Over 2,000 sale barns operated across America in the 1950s. The barn was where fortunes changed hands in 30 seconds. A rancher who had fed and worried over a herd all winter watched the bidding decide whether he broke even or went under. But the sale barn was more than commerce. It was a weekly reunion. Men who would not otherwise leave their property drove an hour to sit in those bleachers, drink bad coffee from styrofoam cups, and catch up with neighbors they had not seen since last Thursday. Deals happened in the parking lot. Handshakes sealed agreements that lawyers would have taken a week to draft. Over half of America's sale barns have closed since 1980. The ones remaining are quieter now, fewer farmers, fewer cattle, fewer handshakes in the parking lot. Number 2, the mailbox conversation. When the mail carrier's dust cloud appeared on the road, neighbors walked out at the same time and ended up talking across fence lines for 30 minutes. The carrier was the most connected person in the county, carrying news between stops like a messenger. He knew who was expecting a check, who had family in the hospital, and whose Sears catalog had arrived. The mailbox conversation disappeared when email replaced letters and the mail stopped being an event. The box still stands at the end of the driveway. Nobody walks out to meet it anymore. Number 1, the harvest crew. When the wheat was ready or the corn needed bringing in, no single family could do it alone. Neighbors arrived at dawn with their own equipment, their own fuel, their own lunch packed by their wives. They worked your fields today. You worked theirs tomorrow. The crew moved farm to farm until every acre in the community was harvested. Nobody asked, nobody negotiated. The calendar was set by the grain itself, and everyone knew when it was time. The women cooked enormous meals served on planks laid across sawhorses in the yard. Fried chicken, biscuits, corn on the cob, green beans, gallons of iced tea, and pie. Always pie. Apple, cherry, and pecan. 3 or 4 varieties because every woman brought her best. The harvest crew was the ultimate test of the rural social contract. You showed up. You worked until the job was done. You did not keep score because everyone knew the score. The men beside you were the same men who would pull your truck from a ditch in January, sit with you at the hospital in March, and stand beside your coffin when the time came. Industrial farming and massive combines eliminated the need by the 1980s. One man and a machine now does what 20 men once did together. The efficiency is undeniable. But the bonds forged in dust and sweat and shared exhaustion have no mechanical replacement. The harvest is still gathered. It is gathered alone now. And the table in the yard, where 20 men sat down together, sunburned and silent with satisfaction, has been folded up and put away for good. If any of these brought back a memory, share it in the comments. Tell me which tradition your family still holds on to and which one you wish you could bring back. Because these were never just habits, they were the way Americans took care of each other before anyone had to be asked.